what's going on YouTube, and welcome to another Season 7 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today I'm going to be covering Jungle Lee Sin, the Blind Monk.
Master yourself, master the enemy.
Alright, so let's hop right into this Lee Sin guide by looking at his pros and his cons. Lee Sin is a champion with a very strong early game, and therefore very strong ganks as well. He gets a lot of burst damage from his ultimate and his Q ability, and a lot of mobility from his W. Lee Sin is also an amazing playmaker. I'm sure you've seen all those professional Lee Sins that flash behind people and kick people into their team for them to just die instantly. He can create all sorts of picks for your team and give you a really strong advantage. Lee Sin's also a champion with missing health damage on the second form of his Q ability, which makes him a really solid champion at executing enemies. Finally, Lee Sin also has multiple reveals, which makes him a really solid pick against champions with stealth. Now, even though Lee Sin has a lot of pros, he also has a couple cons, and the first one is he scales very poorly. He starts off as an incredibly strong champion, but he gets weaker and weaker as the game progresses. Lee Sin's also a pretty skill shot reliant champion, and therefore also hard to master. His combos are definitely not the easiest things to pull off, but if you can, he is a fantastic champion. For my masteries, I like to go 18 Cunning and 12 Ferocity, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as my keystone mastery. This is by far the best defensive mastery for Lee Sin, since it does do some nice added damage into his burst combos and is really strong in the early and the mid game. As for the rest of your masteries, well, you pretty much just want to focus on increasing your damage as much as possible. Lee Sin really relies on getting his team snowballing in the early and the mid game, and these masteries are going to add a bunch of damage and really allow you to do this. For my runes, I like to go for attack damage reds, armor yellows, magic resist blues, and attack speed quints. The attack damage and the attack speed will add a nice extra chunk of damage and make clearing through the jungle and your ganks a lot more effective. Then, since Lee Sin is a bruiser, you want to pick up that armor and magic resist just so you're a little bit more durable. The armor in particular is fantastic for clearing through the jungle because you will be taking reduced damage against the minions and you will stay rather healthy. Lee Sin also does have the option of going for 3 quints of attack damage as well, since he does have a bunch of attack speed from his passive. The choice between attack speed and attack damage is completely up to you. For your first summoner spell, you'll want to grab Flash. You can pull off all sorts of different plays with it, and you can get your team all sorts of different kills. One popular combo is using your Flash to jump behind a target and then using your Dragon Rage to kick them into your team so your team can delete them. You of course always have the option of flashing forward and using your Resonating Strike to jump onto the enemy from a really long distance. Now, since you are a jungler, your next summoner spell is obviously Smite. This is required so you're able to clear through the jungle, secure objectives like Dragon and Baron, and buy your jungler item. A Tracker's Knife is really solid on Lee Sin because it will allow you to ward hop throughout the game, which is very important to have. Your passive ability is Flurry, and when used properly, it will give you a bunch of extra damage output. After using an ability, Lee Sin's next 2 basic attacks within 3 seconds gain 40% bonus attack speed, returning 20 energy on the first attack and 10 on the second. So this has the potential to be a very strong passive, but you have to use it properly. You'll want to try to spread out your abilities as much as possible and make sure you get 2 basic attacks in between each one. Now, since your Q, W, and E all have 2 different uses, you can proc it twice on each ability. For instance, when you're clearing through the jungle, hit a creep with your Q, then auto-attack twice, hit it with your Q, and auto-attack again, and then use a different ability. This, of course, will also make sure Lee Sin has rather high energy at all times, so make sure you're doing it. Keep in mind, however, if you are going for a rather fast engage combo like a ward hop kick, you're not going to be auto-attacking in between each ability. Your Q ability forms are Sonic Wave and Resonating Strike, which gives you a lot of damage and a really good gap closer. The first part is Sonic Wave, and when activated, Lee Sin fires a Sonic Blast in the target direction, dealing physical damage to the first enemy it hits and granting true sight of them for 3 seconds. If Sonic Wave hits, Lee Sin can cast Resonating Strike within the next 3 seconds. When Lee Sin activates Resonating Strike, Lee Sin dashes to the enemy marked by Sonic Wave, dealing physical damage capped against non-champions. So your Q ability in full is by far your best ability on Lee Sin because it does your majority of damage, so therefore you want to max it first. As long as you can consistently land this ability on an enemy champion, you will have a really solid gap closer. This also deals 8% of the target's missing health, so it's a very, very solid execute ability. It's also worth noting that you can use this to hop to a jungle camp if you are getting chased and trying to escape to have another escape route. This, combined with your W, gives you a massive amount of mobility. Your W ability forms are Safeguard and Iron Will, and this gives you a really solid shield and great sustain. When you activate the first part Safeguard, Lee Sin dashes the target ally or friendly ward. If the ally is a champion, both they and Lee Sin are shielded for 2 seconds, and Safeguard's cooldown is reduced by 50%. Lee Sin can also self-cast Safeguard to shield himself. If Safeguard is used, Lee Sin can cast Iron Will within 3 seconds. When you activate Iron Will, for 4 seconds Lee Sin gains bonus lifesteal and bonus spell vamp. So this here is another really solid ability on Lee Sin because it gives you a lot of mobility since you can hop to allies or wards, and of course you get Spell Vamp and Lifesteal as well, which is great for sustaining. Lee Sin is known for his patented ward hop, and this is what allows you to do it. Simply drop your ward on the ground and use your W ability to jump to it to close a rather large gap. When you combine the shield and the lifesteal, he also has a rather healthy jungle clear. You can max either your W or your E second, but since this does give you a nice shield and some really solid sustain as well, I usually pick this one to max second. Your E ability forms are Tempest and Cripple, and this gives you some nice AoE damage and a really solid slow as well. When you activate the first part, Tempest, Lee Sin smashes the ground, dealing magic damage to nearby enemies and granting sight of them for 4 seconds. If Tempest hits an enemy, Lee Sin can cast Cripple within the next 3 seconds. When you activate the second part, Cripple, Lee Sin slows all enemies in range and marked by Tempest for 4 seconds, decaying over the duration. So this is a pretty solid ability because it does have a 100% AD ratio and does some pretty nice AoE damage, which is great in the jungle. It's of course also an ability that slows your enemy, so it's also great in ganks. When you are going for a gank, make sure you apply this ability and activate it for the slow so your team can follow up. Against very mobile teams, you may want to consider maxing this ability second, but usually I'll just stick with the W. Lee Sin's ultimate is Dragon's Rage, and it's great for its really high damage and the fact that it can put squishy enemies in a really bad position. When activated, Lee Sin roundhouse kicks the target enemy champion, instantly rooting them for 0.25 seconds, dealing physical damage and knocking them back 1200 units over 1 second. Enemies hit by the enemy turn projectile receive bonus physical damage and are knocked up for 1 second. This ability also has a 200% bonus AD ratio, so it's going to do some pretty crazy damage. The best part of this ability, however, is the fact that you can kick somebody into your team. Use either your flash or ward hop to get behind the enemy champion and then kick them toward yours. When an enemy is low, you can always use this ability as well and combine it with your Q ability to execute the target since it does missing health damage. The enemies are going to be rooted and knocked back, which is going to make landing your Q ability insanely easy since they will not be able to move. In a straight up team fight where you can't find a pick, try to hit a target through as many targets as possible so they will take a lot of damage and of course be knocked up. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then you of course want to max your Q ability first because it's by far your highest damage ability. Now you always have the option of maxing either your W or your E second, but usually I go for my W. The shield will be rather strong and you become a much tankier champion with it, and of course you can also save your allies. That increased sustain is also going to be really nice in teamfights. So that of course means I save my E ability for last, but against very mobile teams, consider maxing it second before your W. Either way, make sure you pick it up at level 3 so you actually have a slow. Lee Sin is a champion with a lot of different combos, but now I'm going to show you 3 of his best ones. Keep in mind I will be breaking it down slowly, you will want to pull it off a lot quicker in-game. So first up is the ultimate QQ combo, which is great for executing. Start by kicking the target when they're low, and then hit them with your Q ability since they won't be able to move, and activate your second form of Q to execute the target. This is a really solid combo to use when a target is really low to finish them off instantly. Next up is the Ward Hop Ultimate QQ combo. In this combo, you want to start by ward hopping behind the enemy champion, then kicking them towards your team and hitting them with your Q and then your second Q. This will not only do a lot of damage to that target, but also kick the target towards your team so they can also follow up with damage. By using the second form of your Q ability, you're of course jumping to the target as well, which will take you out of danger if there was multiple enemies near the target that you just kicked. As I said, this is a very strong engaging combo, but ward hopping at the beginning, especially followed by a kick, is hard to pull off when you're just learning Lee. You may want to spend some time learning this in the practice tool. For the last combo, we're going to incorporate flash. For this combo, you want to use it against a champion far away so you can close a gap on them and then flash behind to kick them towards your team. So that's exactly what you do. Start by ward hopping towards the enemy champion, quickly flash behind them, kick them towards your team, and then follow up with yet again the QQ combo. It's a little bit easier to pull off than just ward hopping behind a target, but still somewhat hard to pull off. Lee Sin is a very strong jungler in the early game, so I like to rush level 3 as fast as possible and start ganking. I'd like to start at either blue buff or red buff with a leash for my bot lane and then do wolves and then my other buff. This will give you level 3 very quickly with double buffs, and once you have a point in all of your abilities, your ganks become very strong. Now you do also have the option of invading the enemy jungler as well. Start by quickly taking your first buff and then meet the enemy jungler at their second buff so you can smite it away and then kill them. You're a lot stronger than most champions in the early game, so if you're against a very weak early game champion, try to kill them in their own jungle. When ganking before level 6, you want to try to land your Sonic Wave on the enemy champion and then jump onto them with your Resonating Strike. If it is possible, however, try to run up to the enemy or jump towards them with your Safeguard so you can slow them with your Cripple to make landing your Sonic Wave much easier. It is a rather dodgeable ability, especially at a long range. Ganking, however, gets a lot better when you're level 6. You can either ward hop or use flash to jump behind a target and then use your Dragon's Rage to kick them into your team for them to be easily deleted. Make sure you land your Sonic Wave on the target when they're flying through the air, they can't move after all. Lee Sin is a rather weak team fighter, but if you can manage to kick a high kill priority target into your team with Dragon's Rage, then you can really affect the team fight. Try to combine a ward hop and a flash to jump behind a target and then kick them into your team. As long as you can land your Sonic Wave on the enemy champion, you can use the second part Resonating Strike to jump onto them so you can get out of danger if there are multiple enemies around. If finding a pick like this isn't possible, then usually I'll just stay on the front line and try to help peel for my carries with my Cripple and of course Dragon's Rage. If you can find the angle, try to use Dragon's Rage to knock an enemy into a bunch of other enemies to knock them up so your team will have a much easier time teamfighting. Now let's look at a couple of your hard matchups, and we're going to kick it off with Cho'Gath. He's an incredibly tanky champion that still does a lot of damage. You're going to do no damage to him, and he's going to destroy you. Try to avoid Cho'Gath as much as you can because he's not a very mobile champion, you have much more mobility. You will be able to gank lanes much quicker and much more often, so try to abuse it as much as you can, and do not fight Cho'Gath. Next up, I've got another top tier jungler, Maokai. He's a very bursty champion with a lot of sustain as well, and he's going to destroy you in the mid and late game. He is a champion that's somewhat susceptible to your invades early on, so try to fight him early on and don't let him get his items. He's yet again a champion that doesn't have a lot of mobility, so try to abuse this and outgank him. He's also a much better team fighter than you, so you gotta try to get yourself or your lane snowballing to counter this. Next here I have Rammus, who's a champion that can pretty much 1v1 any attack damage based champion there is. He's gonna rush an early Thornmail, which is gonna make you do absolutely no damage against him and make you take a bunch of damage in return. He's also a champion that has some pretty decent mobility from his Q ability. You'll want to place some deep wards to try to keep track of him as much as you can because his counter ganks are pretty damn effective. If he rolls up and taunts you, you're pretty much fucked. Alright, now let's finish off this guide with the item build, which starts with a Hunter's Machete, refillable potion, and a warding totem. For your core build, you want to go for a Tracker's Knife enchanted with Warrior, a Black Cleaver, and a Deadman's Plate. As a Lee Sin, you're going to have to go for the Tracker's Knife because the wards are too good to pass up. It will allow you to ward hop throughout the game. You'll then want to get the Black Cleaver to get some nice cooldown reduction in armor shred, and then the Deadman's Plate to get some nice tankiness and increased mobility. For your boot options, you have the Boots of Mobility for quicker ganks, Ninja Tabbies against high AD teams, and Merc Treads against high AP and CC heavy teams. For the item pool, I first have the Maw. This is a great way to add some additional damage and have a really good defensive at the same time. If there are some AP assassins on the enemy team, this is a fantastic item because it will help you avoid getting bursted instantly. Another great offensive and defensive item you could purchase would be the Guardian Angel. It'll give you some really solid attack damage, but also the ability to come back to life if you do die when you do have the shield available. This can really affect the outcome of late game team fights, and I pretty much always buy the item. If you're instead looking to assassinate some people, you could get the Duskblade. This will give Lee Sin a lot of extra damage and make him a very bursty champion, especially if you buy it early on. Lee Sin also has the option of going for a Sterak's Gauge. This is another really solid item because it gives you some attack damage, yet also gives you a really solid defensive from the shield that provides when you take a certain amount of damage. If you instead needed some magic resist, you could always go for the Spirit Visage. This will give you some nice health and magic resist and also increase the healing from your W. Now finally, if you wanted some armor instead, you could get either a Randuin's or a Thornmail. If I'm against a high crit champion like a Yasuo, then I'll pretty much always buy the Randuin's, but against a very high AD team in general, then you probably want to pick up the Thornmail. For my example full build, I take the core build, pick up some Merc Treads, and then a Spirit Visage, and a Guardian Angel. You'll do some pretty decent damage because you have a lot of attack damage and an armor shred, but you're also going to be extremely durable. And that's all I've got for Jungle Lee. Don't forget to check out the video description below for a link to all of my social medias. I do also have a Discord server, so if you do need any additional help or you just want to hang out, then please feel free to join. We have a lot of people in there, and a lot of them love to help anybody who needs it. I also have a second Let's Play channel, so if you enjoy Let's Plays, please also check out my second channel. But other than that, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, and peace. Thanks for the outro, Nova.